Hey, hey, hey. Hello. Hello, hello. What it do? What it do? I hope y'all ain't enjoying your night. So listen, I know I'm late. I'm late to the party, but I'm here. Thank God I'm here. Ain't that on the color purple? Thank God I'm here. Trump and a whole bunch of stuff, man. He trying hard, hard, hard. He going hard every day, trying to stop the process on this midterm and him having to leave and him losing. It is just one thing after another. It's a lot going on. I've been all over the place today. Hopefully tomorrow will be better. I'm going to not stay here very long because it's some stuff I need to talk about and get into and listen to and get a better understanding, because they are constantly trying to pull the wool over our eyes so that we don't see what we know we see. And that's just what that is. That just kind of sums it up right there. And because it's so much going on, and when I say so much, I do mean so much. He winning in court a little bit, he losing. He's still trying to deport people. What's that really about? I do not know. I want you to picture. And because he is, hell, his mom and them are illegal immigrants. I just don't get it. But he feel like the rule don't apply to him and them. Hey, Mrs. Tom. Hey, Janet here. I missed her. Oh, this was from earlier, I think. Hey, Crystal. Hey, Janet. Yeah, so it kills me how they don't think the law applies to them. They can just bypass it whenever they want to. Again, I keep saying my mama used to say they make the rules, they break them. But the issue is, the problem is that they don't think these laws that they have created to slow us down, to tell us what we can and cannot do, give them right to do whatever they want to do. It just blows my mind. It's absolutely mind blowing that, you know. It blows my mind. What did I see earlier today? Descended into a shouting match. They shouting and acting a fool, fighting, cause he know he on a wing and a prayer, baby. He already know he's on a wing and a prayer. Is this yesterday? Let me see. And he don't know what to do, and he feeling defeated. Some of the judges is turning against him. Some of them trying to hang in there because he fussing and cussing. I don't care nothing about none of that. Let me see what this is. Yeah, you taking too long. Let's see what happened in court today. Hey, Joe. Please check your voter registration status. Most countries you can access online. Yup. He didn't want to do the mail ballots, although he used it. Now all of a sudden it's corrupt. But you used it. Let me go with the being first. Let me see, because this is less than 30 minutes ago. Round. Come on, I don't know why. It's acting funny, but baby, it's been acting funny for about a week now. News helps. Lord, do I need to refresh? Do I need to go to can't hide the criminal contempt? Let's hear
Will
this.
district court judges still be allowed to use their inherent authority to police bad conduct in their courtroom, misbehavior, contempt, contumacy? Will district court judges still be allowed to use their inherent authority
Can y'all
to
hear that?
police bad conduct in their courtroom, misbehavior, contempt, contumacious conduct, fraud on the court by using criminal contempt proceedings and fact-finding? That is what is at stake in a case. I can't undersell the importance of a case that's now before the federal appellate court in the District of Columbia, before the entire 11-judge panel. It's a case we call JGG involving Donald Trump. It really goes to the power of a federal judge to root out fraud and corruption in their own courtroom. Seems fundamental. And yet the prior panels of that same court, three-judge panels dominated by Trump appointees, thought it was nothing wrong with blocking Chief Judge Jeb Boasberg and his efforts to get to the root of the evil in the Department of Justice, and whether they purposely violated, told the judge to go F himself, and continued to fly planes to El Salvador when they were grounded by court order. And it's now up at the appellate court. And the reason for that is the American Civil Liberties Union. We're so proud of our relationship with the ACLU, and I had the honor of interviewing Lee Gallant, who's the lead lawyer for the American Civil Liberties Union in this case. This will make history, the result of this case. And I interviewed him in the last 48 hours on the Intersection podcast. And you gotta hear what he had to say.
Look at
Here's my interview with Lee.
Mike.
Hi, Lee.
Hey, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for being. You must have been happy today.
Yeah, we are very pleased that the full court is going to take a look at this. We have been fighting this now for over a year, as has Chief Judge Boasberg. We think the government's actions that night back in March 2025 in deliberately what we think was clear, deliberate intention to violate his order was really a remarkable move by the United States. And we're glad the full court is going to now take a look at this.
Why don't you remind everybody, because, we've done, of course, our updated briefing here. And for those that don't already know, the American Civil Liberties Union, we collaborate with them over on the Legal AF YouTube channel. They've got their own playlist. I just interviewed one of your colleagues today about a Supreme Court decision. And Lee's been on with us before about this particular case. But why don't you, because it'll be more potent coming from you, talk about your 100-plus clients, what happened to them, and what that judge ruled, at 9:37, whatever it was, to ground those planes, and why we're here. Then we can talk about the en banc decision, or en banc order.
Absolutely. So during the campaign, President Trump was constantly saying he might invoke a wartime authority called the Alien Enemies Act and use it against a criminal organization, or alleged criminal gang members, right? And so this is a law that's only been used 3 times in our country's history: the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. And that's not surprising because it's meant to be only used during war. We got wind in March that the president might invoke it against a regular criminal organization and unilaterally allege that Venezuelan men were part of this gang, put them under this wartime authority, and then send them to this notorious prison in El Salvador, essentially a gulag. It's called Sacat. We filed at 1 a.m. saying we believe this is going to happen, and we think it may happen tomorrow, Friday. This was Saturday. This was Friday night, early Saturday morning. The next morning, the judge issued an injunction saying our 5 plaintiffs that we named could not be removed. But he didn't say the whole class of people, which was dozens and dozens and dozens of men, couldn't be removed. We said to the judge, we think that the planes may go today, and we need a hearing to stop the removal of all these other men, what turned out to be 137 in our class. He scheduled an emergency Saturday night hearing at 5 p.m. He heard the arguments and he said, crystal clear, I do not want these men removed to El Salvador until the court has had a chance to look at this case. That's what happened. Nonetheless, the government removed them to El Salvador and sent them to this prison, and then came back the next day or Monday and gave this what was essentially a completely contrived excuse, saying we didn't think your order stopped us from handing the men over to El Salvador. We thought your order only applied while the planes were still in U.S. airspace. Every judge has looked at that for the most part, or not every judge, but the overwhelming majority of judges have said that's a completely ridiculous interpretation. Obviously, Chief Judge Boasberg was intending to have the men not turned over to El Salvador and remain in the physical custody of the United States. He was very angry, to say the least, and he started criminal contempt proceedings. The government has tried to stop them at every turn. This is the second time they're in the Court of Appeals. Finally, the full court now is going to look at this to see whether his order was clear. The government says it wasn't. We hope that they'll say it was, and that he has the authority to investigate. Meanwhile, it's been a year of these men being first in this brutal Salvadoran prison for months and months, being abused and tortured, and then sent back to Venezuela. The government tried to say, well, no harm, no foul, because they're back in their home country. These are Venezuelan men. But of course, they fled Venezuela because they feared persecution in Venezuela. So they're hardly free now in Venezuela, free from harm. And so all of this has been happening over a year with the government trying to stop it. What's remarkable is the government has now said, we concede that we removed these men in violation of their constitutional due process rights because we didn't give them a chance to show they weren't even gang members to begin with. But the judge now, they're saying, cannot do anything because they're out of the country. Well, of course, the reason they're out of the country is because the government violated the order in the first place. So all this has been playing out now since March of 2025. We will have a hearing before the full court of DC Circuit on September 29th, and we're hoping the full court says Judge Boasberg's order was clear, the government was required to follow it, and he has the ability to investigate just who did what and who made the intentional decision, whether it was high-level Department of Justice people, whether it was cabinet officers, whether it was some combination.
And so I looked at the order from today. We have it up on Substack now. It includes, of course, the original panel, Katsas, Rayo, and was it Childs in the I know there were so many. There was the original panel a while ago was Judge Rao, Judge Katsas, and Judge Pillard, and the latest panel was Judge Rao, Judge Walker, and Judge Childs. Right, got it. So, right, exactly. And so they've now set up the briefing schedule throughout July and August, and September 29th. They're going to be holding it at 9:30, oral argument. We'll stream it live if we can, which I'm sure we can, on Legal AF YouTube channel. Now, before you got on, I don't know if you saw when I interviewed Senator Whitehouse, they're investigating whether there was collusion. I can't. The words that I'm about to form, you and I are peers. I mean, have you ever been involved with a case where a judge at this level started criminal contempt proceedings against the United States of America?
No, and that's a great question because I've been doing this work more than 3 decades. I've never seen anything like this. And truthfully, as you and I have talked about before,
criminal attempt.
One of the major differences between Trump 1 and Trump 2 is the absolute disrespect they're showing to the courts. During Trump 1, there were a lot of draconian policies, and we were obviously fighting in court, including the family separation policy. But I never saw them come close to saying, we're just going to disrespect the courts, violate their orders. But this is just a whole new thing, and it's not a partisan thing. No prior administration, no prior Justice Department, whether it's a Democratic or Republican administration, has ever been doing things like this. This is just a blatant disregard for federal court orders. And I know that you cover a lot of important substantive topics, discrete policies that are being challenged in court. But in some ways, this transcends everything and is more important than everything, because if the executive branch and the Justice Department could just thumb their nose at court orders, then the whole system breaks down. Then nothing is possible. So there's really a lot at stake here.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect segue to my Judge Ludick clip in a moment, and the 174 judges that were involved here as friends of the court to encourage the en banc. Well, I mean, isn't this a natural byproduct of Donald Trump's personal criminal defense team and what they learned in those cases where they were abusive to the various judges on behalf of citizen Trump when he was, Todd Blanche and Emil Bovee and the rest? This is what they learned, that you can attack judges and their family and not pay too much of a repercussion. So the question is, I'm reading the order, and it says, upon consideration of the petition for rehearing, en banc, which is obviously coming from your group, you, and the response, the unopposed motion for invitation to participate as amici curiae by 174 former judges in support of the petition, they then order it. So they got it, and they have cited it in their order as something that they found to be compelling. And I've interviewed Michael Ludick last week. I have him on tomorrow with me about what he did getting the 35 judges together in Miami in front of Judge Williams to reopen the case there. Again, another case about the power of a judge, inherent power to investigate fraud on the court or other abuse within the justice system, and what the power is. And that this 200 or so federal judges and state judges that Judge Ludick has put together that kind of pick their moments, but really important ones, and get cited. I don't know if you caught my interview, but let me play you a clip and listen. This is how he thinks, how important the former judges are. I want to get your impression. Play the clip.
Never before in American history has a group of judges, retired or otherwise, ever come together, much less to speak publicly against what they are witnessing in the United States of America with respect to the corruption of the Constitution and the rule of law in this country. I could not be any prouder of this group of judges. 200 or 300 former federal and state judges have come together over the past year and a half, enthusiastic and willing to be heard collectively as that group on many of the issues that are facing America today. Extraordinarily unprecedented. And this is why they have done it. There is not a question in the world that the only voices that can be heard today above the din of the political, partisanship are judges, sitting active judges, and even retired judges. They are the only people in this country, Michael, who can save America today. And these judges, both active and retired, are prepared to honor their oaths in trying to save America.
Well, that sound you hear is a collective sigh
Y'all,
of relief
please
from
hit
our
the like
audience.
button.
Google Fiber is now officially G-Fiber. From the internet provider that stands out for speed.
In trying to save America.
Well, that sound you hear is a collective sigh of relief from our audience. Yeah, we felt better after hearing that. What impact do you think that amicus brief has had on the panel?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that all these former judges and in a nonpartisan, bipartisan way have come out is so critical, because it's taking a lot of courage for the sitting judges, given how the administration is acting. And just, a couple of things. One is Chief Judge Boasberg was sort of the first to come out and say, look, this is unacceptable, violating court orders. And it took a lot of courage. And as you know, the administration really went after him, from the president calling for his impeachment to online attacks. And so he has been very courageous, and he has not let them deter him, and he has stuck with it. And what I think you see is courage, but getting more courage, because other judges now, Republican or democratically appointed, have come out and said the same thing, and that their orders are being violated. So I think the fact that hopefully we prevail in this en banc and the DC Circuit has Judge Boasberg's back will be important, not only in our case, but will send an important signal throughout the country that the appellate court.
Okay, so I don't know who you talking about, Lelos Dope. Have you hit the like button? Y'all hit the like button. Please don't come in here asking a whole bunch of questions. If you want questions answered here, everyone knows he can't run for president. He's going to try, though. This guy doesn't even know what constitution. Who you talking about? Lelos Dope. Who you talking about? I just want to be clear. Hey, Kawana. Y'all hit the like button. It's 172 people in here. 21 minutes in and only 16 likes. That will not work. Hi, Sofa. Y'all hit the double tap the face of your phone, just like that. And if you're on a computer, hit those three dots at the top right corner. And subscribe. I hope Dominion get investigated. Who are you talking about? I need for you to hurry up and speak up, Lelos Dope, or I'm finna remove you. So don't talk shit on the cool, and then when I call you out, you get quiet. Because I'm going to put you out. Okay. Get them out. Get whoever they are out. Yeah, you talk shit, incognito, and you don't want nobody to ask you nothing. Now, you won't be able to drop that fake propaganda and shit over here. And if that's what y'all own, go ahead and get out. Everyone. Patrick. Yeah. Just what we need. I left this. Okay. I must didn't handle my business right. Y'all hit the like button. Y'all come in here talking shit and don't even hit the like button. Cowards, just like your tramp lover. Yeah, get your ass up out of here. You're not wanted. What? What that white man? What are you talking about? Layla, go harder. I'm trying to understand what y'all talking about. Back it up since you want to interrupt and you didn't like what he had to say. Yeah, let me back that thing up. What y'all know about that? Back that thing up. Let's go.
This system and what the power is, and that this 200 or so federal judges and state judges.
What's that white man?
Judge Ludick has put together.
I don't know what that means. What that white man?
Their moments, but really important ones, and get cited. I don't know if you caught my interview, but let me play you a clip and listen.
Right. I don't know what you're trying to say.
How important the former judges are. I want to get your impression. Play the clip.
Never before in American history has a group of judges, retired or otherwise, ever come together, much less to speak publicly against what they are witnessing in the United States of America with respect to the corruption of the Constitution and the rule of law in this country. I could not be
Bye,
any
Jacob.
prouder of this group of judges. 200 or
Hey, be rich.
300 former federal and state judges have come together over the past year and a half.
Yeah, let me handle this. Let me handle my business. Yeah, we not finna be interrupted. Y'all not finna get away without hitting the like button. Ain't none of that going on tonight. Not tonight. I said hit the like button. Hey, Joe. Joe said bye. 194 people in here, only 21 likes. Get the likes up or get out. I don't care who you are. I don't care who your mama and them is. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care about none of that. I don't care about none of that. Yeah, I didn't have my subscribers only on. My bad. Yeah, because y'all don't want to subscribe. So then shut up. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, subscribers only. If you want to speak. Yeah. Now shut up. And hit the like button. Let's go. There we go. Making us work hard while we trying to listen and understand what you devil folk trying to do to us on the cool. Yeah. We ain't buying that shit. Y'all hit the like button early. And while y'all hitting the like button, yeah, give me some hearts on the side. Let me know you appreciate me. Or hit my Cash App. That's how I know you love me. You understand? Stand up here playing with y'all.
Enthusiastic and willing to be heard.
$
collectively as that
AUNTEAFEE. Auntie Fee. Yeah, I'm not playing with you cowards tonight. I said what I said. Let's go.
About the power of a judge, inherent power, to investigate fraud on the court or other abuse within the justice system, and what the power is, and that this 200 or so federal judges and state judges that Judge Ludick has put together, that kind of pick their moments, but really important ones, and get cited. I don't know if you caught my interview, but let me play you a clip and listen. This is how he thinks how important the former judges are. I want to get your impression. Play the clip.
Never before in American history has a group of judges, retired or otherwise, ever come together, much less to speak publicly against what they are witnessing in the United States of America with respect to the corruption of the Constitution and the rule of law in this country. I could not be any prouder of this group of judges. 200 or 300 former federal and state judges have come together over the past year and a half, enthusiastic and willing to be heard collectively as that group on many of the issues that are facing America today. Extraordinarily unprecedented. And this is why they have done it. There is not a question in the world that the only voices that can be heard today above the din of the political, partisanship are judges, sitting active judges, and even retired judges. They are the only people in this country, Michael, who can save America today. And these judges, both active and retired, are prepared to honor their oaths in trying to save America.
Well, that sound you hear is a collective sigh of relief from our audience. Yeah, we felt better after hearing that. What impact do you think that amicus brief has had on the panel?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that all these former judges and in a nonpartisan, bipartisan way have come out is so critical, because it's taking a lot of courage for the sitting judges, given how the administration is acting. And just, a couple of things. One is Chief Judge Boasberg was sort of the first to come out and say, look, this is unacceptable, violating court orders. And it took a lot of courage. And as you know, the administration really went after him, from the president calling for his impeachment to online attacks. And so he has been very courageous, and he has not let them deter him, and he has stuck with it. And what I think you see is courage, but getting more courage, because other judges now, Republican or democratically appointed, have come out and said the same thing, and that their orders are being violated. So I think the fact that hopefully we prevail in this en banc and the DC Circuit has Judge Boasberg's back will be important, not only in our case, but will send an important signal throughout the country that the appellate courts are going to have the district courts back. And just one other thing about the Amici, I mean, he's done an incredible job rallying all these judges, but I also want to put in a plug for his co-author, former Judge Nancy Gertner, from the District Court of Massachusetts, who has been integrally involved in this as well. And the two of them have been out there rallying all these other judges, and that to have their support has been absolutely essential for them to come up, because that, as he said, that is so rare for former judges to be coming out like this. But we're in a whole new world. All the other types of ways you would look at things like this are just out the window now. We're talking about the administration, and the administration deliberately violating orders where people's lives are at stake. And remarkably, one of the things they're saying in this case is, well, Judge Boasberg should just cool it and send the case to us, and we'll investigate people. Well, of course, they're not going to do that. They're buried in 2 seconds. And so, that's one of the messages I think these judges.
Right. I forgot. Make a criminal referral to the Department of Justice, and we'll take a look at ourselves. You can trust us, right?
Right, exactly.
Why should Christians bless and support the Jewish people in Israel? If you're a follower of Jesus, you must take his words to heart. Jesus said, salvation comes through the Jews. You see, the Bible you hold dear, the promises of God you cling to, the Jewish Messiah whom you love and follow, Yeshua. All of these blessings wouldn't be yours and mine if it wasn't for the
look at ourselves. You can trust us, right?
Right, exactly.
Well, I know you're proud of your team and of the hard work that went into this. As soon as I saw it, I thought of you. I said, I got to talk to Lee.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And I'm so glad that you're here. Let's end it this way. I know I don't want to be judicious with your time. I'm really glad that you're here to brief the audience. We never like to, this is an up moment, so I don't want to end on anything else but an up moment. What can our audience do to support your work, what you do? How important is it that we have your back when you go into a courtroom?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I appreciate you constantly shining a light on these issues. But I think people should never diminish how important it is for the public to speak out. I think every civil rights lawyer will tell you there's only so much that can be accomplished in the courts. It needs to be supported by a full public outcry, signing petitions, rallying, going to protest. It has to be sort of everyone all in. It can't just be in the courts. So I encourage people, if they're seeing stuff going on and they believe in the rule of law, regardless of what they may think about particular issues, to speak out and let this administration know that the rule of law is important to people and it's a bedrock of this country, and you're supporting these judges trying to enforce the rule of law. No one's saying that every judge's opinion has to be liked by the administration, and they certainly have a right to appeal. But as you started the program saying, rather than just saying, we think this order is wrong and we think we can turn people over to El Salvador, so we're going to appeal it, but we'll comply with the court's order. They just said, we're not going to comply and turn the men over to El Salvador. That is such a fundamental disrespect for the way our system is set up. So everyone needs to speak out, and we very much appreciate you continuing to shine a light on this issue.
Absolutely. Leak alert, defending our democracy along with the American Civil Liberties Union. We got your back because you've got ours. Thanks for joining us here on the intersection of the Midas Touch Network tonight.
Thanks, Michael.
You're welcome, Lee. Welcome back. We sit at the intersection of law and politics so you don't have to. We do it on the intersection every Tuesday night where I ride solo on the Midas Touch Network. The Webby Award winning. In fact, look, I got a Webby right here. The Webby Award winning legal intersection podcast. I really appreciate that. And for all your support. While you're here on Legal AF YouTube channel.
Hold on, we moving on. Excuse me. Let's go back here.
Finally surfaced after going silent all day. He gave a speech moments ago outside of the White House, and he was panicking.
Hey,
As it is
Natural
now
Knowledge.
clear that Iran has
Even
shut down
if
the
you're
Omani
okay, you
shipping
can hit the like
route,
button.
as Iran
Yeah, you
warned
better
it
come on,
would
hit the like button.
if the tankers and vessels would not coordinate with the IRGC.
Like,
As we
share,
reported
subscribe,
earlier,
and support
we
the
know that
platform.
Iran was able to effectively shut down the Oman route after knocking out a Singaporean cargo ship. You see right here the latest UK MTO advisory. You see, as we reported earlier, we know that Iran was able to effectively shut down the Oman route after knocking out a Singaporean cargo ship. You see right here the latest UK.
It kicked me out again. Hold on. Can y'all hear me?
Cargo ship. You see right here the latest UK MTO advisory telling people that and telling the ships they cannot use the Oman route anymore and they must coordinate with the IRGC. As this one account explains, the temporary IMO, International Maritime Organization, back corridor in the Omani waters has been suspended, as Iran warned. You don't go through us, we will attack the ship. That's precisely what it did with this Singapore-flagged cargo ship. The Wall Street Journal also reported it after we were one of the first to report about it here on the Midas Touch Network. And so just to recap, before I show you what Donald Trump was doing on the White House lawn, panicking to this news, Joyce Karam has a nice summary here. Number one, Iran has denied yet again that it will not have IAEA inspectors at its nuclear facilities. A cargo ship from Singapore was attacked in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has received a massive oil waiver, and it has sent out dozens and dozens of tankers and has made billions of dollars. Saudi Arabia is now organizing a reconciliation summit for Arab nations, GCC, Gulf Cooperation Council countries to further reconcile with Iran. The Lebanon and Israel talks have been derailed as Netanyahu and other top Israeli officials say they want more land in Lebanon in addition to the security zones in southern Lebanon. They now want pilot zones. They want more Lebanese territory. And the Lebanese government and President Ayoun thought we were going to be talking about Lebanon taking back the security zone portion back to Lebanon Netanyahu had different ideas. Iran denies agreeing to buying any U.S. soybeans or any U.S. agriculture, so that's not in the deal. We're absolutely not doing that. So Donald Trump, with all that, that's your background. Donald Trump rushes out in the White House lawn, and he goes, Iran's told me that they want to make a deal so badly. They want to make such a big deal with me. What are you talking about? You did the MOU. The final agreement is to implement the terms of the MOU. What
Did
do you
he
mean they want to
forget?
make a deal
I,
with you?
I
You
swear.
have them on the ropes.
I think those clones that they be using with him, I don't think they be knowing what the other one has said. I really don't. I think that they be confused. I think when they change them or switch them out, one come in brand new. It's like, they didn't get it to coincide. They didn't allow it to sync. One clone don't know what the other one is doing. One is way more milder than the other. One of them is demonic. All of them are evil. But I don't think they talk to one another. I don't. Come on, Ben. Shout out to you.
What are you talking about? And by the way, this speech that Donald Trump gave, he gave to a group of farmers at the White House because they want to make such a big deal with me. What are you talking about? You did the MOU. The final agreement is to implement the terms of the MOU. What do you mean they want to make a deal with you? You have them on the ropes? What are you talking about? And by the way, this speech that Donald Trump gave, he gave to a group of farmers at the White House because he needs to bail out the farmers, and he blames former President Biden. He goes, it was Biden's fault.
No, you gave it to that other
$11
guy.
billion to
Bibi
save you from what
cousin.
Biden did. Dude, it is June 25th right now. You've been in office for almost 2 years. You know how pathetic it is that you're blaming former President Biden? Here, play this clip.
Navy, they had 159 ships within 1.5 weeks. They were all at the bottom of the sea. And then I have to listen to the fake news. Oh, they're much better today than they were then. These people are crazy. They want to make a deal with us very badly. And we probably will. I think we will. But the strait is open. Yesterday, they took out 19 million barrels of oil. That's the most in the history of the strait. And the oil prices are dropping like a rock. And
More for Donald Trump. He goes, and guess what, farmers? We knocked the hell out of them, Iran. We're now negotiating from a position of strength. Pure strength. Yeah, Iran struck a ship, controls the Strait of Hormuz. What are you? You've given them billions of dollars. You've given them a general waiver for them to send their oil and get U.S. dollars in return. Here's what Donald Trump says. Play this clip.
And I said, we're going to journey down. We're going to do what we have to do. And we did. We knocked the hell out of them. And now we're negotiating from a position of pure strength. Pure strength. They know that. And the strait's already open. And we're setting records of the strait. But we had to do that. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon.
And then Donald Trump said, and guess what, farmers? We've got great news for you. Iran has agreed to use all of the money that we're giving them to buy your produce. They're going to buy it from you, so you're going to get rich from Iran. We've opened up a new market in Iran. So why do you have to bail them out then, if that's true? This is more fraud. He is just looking at the farmers right in the eye and lying to them over and over again. Play this clip.
For the American farmer, and after years of getting ripped off by other countries on trade, we've reduced the agricultural trade deficit just this year by 42%, opening markets to the American exports, and all over the world we're opening up markets for the farmers. We have another one, a new market coming up, and that's called the lovely country of Iran. It's a beautiful place. Would anybody like to go there? The Islamic Republic of Iran, they're having a hard time with food, and we're going to be taking some of their money and we'll spend it, and we're going to be buying wheat, soybeans, and corn, a lot of it. And that process is going to be starting pretty soon. It's going to be pretty big, too. I think it's going to be very big. We have an expanded market, dairy in Europe, and the dairy market, as you know, in Europe, we've opened it up.
MB Ghalibafarian's parliament leader and lead negotiator of the MOU, says America falsely claims our unfrozen assets will buy their agriculture. Interesting. The only crop we're harvesting is what you planted. Decades of mistrust. It's organic, abundant, and homegrown. But apparently the U.S. only exports GMO soybeans, broken promises, and trash talks. Then Donald Trump here is like, yeah, don't worry about that. We're hot. Have I told you that we're hot? And we took over Venezuela. Yeah, we conquered Venezuela. We destroyed Iran. We're so hot. And we're going to help Venezuela out now with the earthquake. Yeah. Here, play this clip.
We're doing great. Just so you understand that 2 years ago, we had a dead country. We were a dead country. We were a laughing stock all over the world. We had a man that couldn't walk down those 2 steps. We had a man that couldn't sign a document. He had to use an auto pen. You saw the auto pen over there? He was an auto pen. We call him the auto pen president. And think of it, like 96% of the things he signed, he couldn't sign his name. What happened was a rigged election. But think of it, 2 years ago, we were a country that was laughed at all over the world. The king of Saudi Arabia said to me,
by the way, we should be providing humanitarian aid. Donald Trump hasn't helped out North Carolina from a hurricane. Donald Trump hasn't helped California with the wildfires. Donald Trump also hasn't helped American states when it's come to natural disasters. So I want you to know that. Then Donald Trump says, you, the farmers, are the chosen ones. The guy can literally destroy these people's lives, lie to their faces and say Iran's going to buy their produce, and then he calls them the chosen ones. Here, play this clip.
Trees that at any time, and plants that at any time in the history of our country, and as far as I'm concerned, you are the people. You are the very special ones. You're the chosen ones. You're the farmers, and you're the ones that keep it all going. So I'm with you 1,000%, Brooke. Great job.
So that's why Donald Trump says, and we're giving you $11 billion because of Sleepy Joe Biden. You think you're blaming it on Biden? Do we all realize how pathetic this is? That we are 2 years into this disgusting regime, and they are blaming Biden? But these are pathetic losers. That's how they behave. Here, play this clip.
And yesterday we also called on Congress to pass a supplemental funding bill that will provide $11 billion in relief towards specialty crops and helping our great agricultural producers rebound from the losses that they had due to the Biden administration's horrible rules and regulations. So we're going to be getting an $11 billion payment in relief to our farmers. And Brooke, you'll distribute that money hopefully equitably. You'll do it equitably, and you'll do a great job with it.
Speaking of being losers, then Donald Trump says, you don't know, but there's a B in dumb. Democrats, there's a B. I took out the B. Play this clip.
Under the last administration, Sleepy Joe Biden and the radical left Democrats, I changed the name, it's dumb. I will probably always, until they become reasonable, I'll use a U instead of an E. It's very simple. Most people don't know there's a B in dumb, so it's a very simple change. I take out the E and I put in the U, and they're Democrats because their policies are so dumb. So that came out a little while ago, and they hate the farmer too. So do you know that they hate you? You know that, don't you? Anyway, the Democrats.
And then he goes, but guess what, everybody? We caught the vandals. There were vandals in the reflecting pool, and they're going to be in deep trouble. Okay, where are the felony prosecutions against these vandals? Where's the evidence of that? Where is that? I'm curious to see these trials play out of these super secret vandals. Here, play it.
We caught some people vandalizing our beautiful reflecting pool. We have the reflecting pool. They took a cutter, a box cutter or something very sharp. And can you imagine, where did these people come up with this? And they threw a little fertilizer in the water, which is not good. Fertilizer doesn't go well with water. Clear, beautiful water doesn't work well. But they caught them. They actually caught them, and those guys have some problems ahead of them. But they did some damage, but it looks beautiful. I just looked at it, Doug, and it looks beautiful, and they're going to fix it.
There you have it, folks. Let me know what you think. That's what was going on in the White House today. Appreciate you. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million. Thanks for watching. Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MidasPlus.com.
Get the likes up. Let me see what he said.
The good news tonight is that alligator Alcatraz is closing down. Donald Trump's Florida invention for delivering cruel and unusual punishment to people detained in his immigration roundups could not even make it halfway through Donald Trump's presidential term. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was stuck with issuing the surrender statement announcing that the prison camp that he and Donald Trump championed.
Black people.
America continues. This time we're talking about black. The GOP's war on black America continues. This time we're talking about black banks. Trump administration changed the
black men
regarding which institutions can be considered a minority-owned bank under the new language. Yeah, seriously. A bank can... The GOP's war on black America continues. This time we're talking about black banks. Trump administration changed the requirements regarding which institutions can be considered a minority-owned bank under the new language. Yeah, seriously. A bank can qualify as a minority depository institution if it can demonstrate that 51% or more of its ownership is held by someone from a socially or economically disadvantaged group. However, the National Bankers Association is pushing back, arguing the change could make it harder for future minority-owned banks to qualify for MDI status. Nicole Elam is president and CEO of the National Bankers Association. Nicole,
they don't want us to get ahead no more.
I have been continuously
making America great again. It's making America slaves again.
Since Trump got inaugurated, this attack on black America and how they are attacking political, civil rights, legal, social justice, economic, the entire black infrastructure.
Right.
This is another one of those
threats.
As you laid out, this action follows a series of federal decisions, whether it's executive orders, it's court cases that are moving away from race-based assumptions and moving more towards race and gender neutral policies. And this is the latest of many attacks of this nature.
We have, so they're saying that, if you are a white man or a white woman and you claim that you are economically disadvantaged, you can qualify.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so what they are doing is replacing a 30-year-old clear standard that said if you were Black, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Islander, Native American, you were presumed to be part of a racially and socially economically disadvantaged group, Now that completely goes away. So now I can be anybody, a white man, and I can make the case that I am a part of a socially and economically disadvantaged group. And so it's opening up the floodgates, and it's going to have a chilling effect on the industry because the very communities that are going to be impacted by this are the communities that were created to be protected by this particular policy. So it's going to have a chilling effect. And so whenever you replace clarity with uncertainty, it's going to impact new banks. They're not going to want to be designated as an MDI. Why? Because I don't know if I'm going to be able to meet the standard because you took away the standard to hurt me. So why would I go through this process? It's also going to have a chilling effect on the existing MDIs. As you know, there are only 24 Black banks, and those banks need to grow in order to do more lending in their community. But I'm going to think twice. Do I want to raise capital to grow? Do I want to merge with another bank to grow? Why would I do that? Because if I do that, that's a material change. And I'm going to have to go and prove that I am now part of a socially and economically disadvantaged ownership group.
If you go to my iPad, this is the 5-page statement right here. The Department of Treasury Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, OCC policy statement on minority depository institutions. And it goes on here talking about how they've updated the policy statement. It says this removal improves the policy statement's expected longevity and avoids future confusion. The document includes other conforming edits. For example, under the previous version of this policy statement, the OCC could, at its discretion, continue to designate a bank as an MDI under certain circumstances when the bank no longer met the statutory definition of an MDI to improve the policy statement's consistency with FIRREA while minimizing disruption to current MDIs. The updated policy statement describes how the OCC will maintain the designations of current MDIs. And so they're claiming that, oh no, this is not going to be a disruption, Nicole. This is no big deal.
Yeah, I don't know how moving from clarity from a 30-year-old standard to unclear makes it better. It's not going to make it better. There was nothing clear about a minority group being Black, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Islander, Native American, and they added women. That was very clear. Now you're saying I'm becoming more clear and helping you out, and it's not going to have an impact on you by moving to something that's big and broad, by saying socially and economically disadvantaged. This would be easier to swallow if we had not seen everything that had happened, if we had not seen executive orders that sought to dismantle DEI programs, if we had not seen cases like the Harvard case, the section or the 8A program, SBA 8A programs that sought to dismantle these types of things. If we hadn't seen that, then maybe. But you're following the same pattern that you followed in those cases.
See, this is one of the reasons why when Trump unveiled his platinum plan, I call it a tinfoil plan, I knew it was fraudulent. In fact, this right here, this is the Black Economic Empowerment and Access to Capital section. It says right here, grow minority-owned businesses with additional tax cuts and stimulate hiring and investment. It says here, increase activity and opportunity zones. Then it goes, fueling access to capital for Black-owned businesses. Increasing opportunities for small business lending and technical assistance through community development financial institutions as CDFIs in order to grow business and create generational wealth opportunities with over $400 billion in lending. Examine alternative ways to build credit. Make the Minority Business Development Agency permanent. Appoint its leader to the Assistant Secretary of Commerce level. Create a sub-office of African American Affairs and engage with private sector advisors to ensure real-world plans and solutions. Increase the number of Black-owned contracting businesses, financial service entities, and private equity investment funds through regulatory reform and up to $40 billion in government funding alongside traditional private investment, and host senior executives from major financial institutions on a quarterly basis to advance new and equitable lending programs for Black communities. Nicole, all of this was flat out trash.
All of those things have been attacked. All of those things. Even when you think about the lawsuit against MBDA, all of those things have been attacked. And what we do know is that capital is the civil rights issue of the 21st century. And when you attack people's ability to have access to capital, you attack their ability to build wealth. And when you come after Black banks, you are coming after communities' access to capital. That means people aren't going to get access to mortgages. They're not going to get access to small business loans. They're not going to be able to build businesses, buy homes, save and invest in their future. They're not going to be able to do that. Why? Because what we know for certain is that Black banks do more lending in their communities than their peers. We do 2 times more lending in our communities than our peers. So when you are attacking capital, you are attacking our ability to build and create wealth. And they have been systemic along the way. In this move to be more race neutral, in this move to be more gender neutral.
Well, and not only that, the reality is in the last year, Biden-Harris, Black businesses got $10 billion in federal contracts. It was 2%. That's not anything that's just to yell about, but the reality is that that was actually a record. And here's what we know. Under Trump, it's now down to 1.2%. We know the SBA broke records 3 straight years with its lending to Black businesses, and we're seeing a massive decrease under Trump. I keep saying this. This is an anti-Black administration, and they do not want to see African Americans thrive. And these things that they are doing are very specific in terms of how they are attacking Black America.
Over the last 5 years, you saw the most growth amongst Black banks that you had ever seen. They grew by 80% in asset size, the most growth that you have ever seen. Now you're starting to see a decline. And that's not by accident. It was because you had policies that were in place that were focused on helping these Black banks grow. And now you have policies in place that are doing the very opposite.
And so I just want to be perfectly clear what you just said here. Let's be real clear. Because you had Biden and Harris, a Democratic president and vice president, and because you had them advocating specifically for black banks and for CDFIs, and then you had, of course, the Congressional Black Caucus and others. You had them controlling the power of the purse, controlling the House those first 2 years. There was a direct benefit to black America as a result. So when you talk about lending, that's lending to small businesses, individuals who need that support. And let's just be perfectly honest, and I'm going to name names. These are businesses that could not go to a JP Morgan Chase or go to a Bank of America or go to these go to a Wells Fargo to get that investment, to get those loans, to get those lines of credit. And so this is what we're seeing. And so you had Democrats who were advocating for black banks, and you were the beneficiaries of their work, and now we're seeing that it's not the case under Republican MAGA rule, correct?
What I'm saying is that intentionality matters. When you have an administration that is focused on black businesses and black banks and black community lenders, you see it reflected in policies and procurement and programs. If you have an administration that is intentionally doing the opposite, you see it reflected in programs, policies, and procurement. And we are right now seeing two different things.
Last question for you. Obviously, he is in the White House for 2 more years. Obviously, you've got a midterm election going on this November. Listen, if Republicans continue to control the House and the Senate, and obviously he's there in the White House, this is going to be hugely problematic for black banks over the next couple of years. Yes or no?
Yes, you are not going to see new black banks being formed. It's going to be very difficult for black banks to grow and to raise capital. Why? Because why would I go through the process of putting myself through a new designation that is unclear if I don't know what the outcome is going to be? So it's going to have a chilling effect on new banks. You're probably not going to see a lot of new black banks being formed, and it's going to have a chilling effect on existing banks who are trying to grow, raise capital, and merge.
All right then, Nicole, we surely appreciate it. Keep up the good work. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Quickly go to my panel. Rebecca Carruthers, President and CEO of Fair Election Center out of DC. Robert Patillo, Civil Rights Attorney with the Patillo Law Firm out of Atlanta. Jolanda Jones, Texas State Representative and lawyer. We also have Georgia State Representative Derek Jackson joining us right now. Okay, glad to have you here. Real quick, Robert, you work with Rainbow Push in their economic project there, and this is fundamentally clear. This is about economics. This is about money, and we tried to tell these people, and all these ADOLPHs and FBA people who were telling us, oh no, Kamala's this, she's, and all these fools running their mouths out here, folks who don't even vote saying, oh no, Kamala's is the FBA people who were telling us, oh no, Kamala's this, she's, and all these fools running their mouths out here, folks who don't even vote saying, oh no, Kamala's is the same as Donald Trump. There's no difference between the two. This is a perfect example where there was a difference between the two.
I want people to hear me. I say this once per quarter. Those organizations, ADOS, the FBA organizations, are almost all COINTEL.
Hold on, let me get it back together. I was trying to get up and show Miss Tom. Hold on. Yeah, hit the like button. I don't want to keep asking y'all to do that. Here's One United. That's the black-owned bank. One United.
If you look at where their money comes from, they do not come from black organizations and black people. When is the last time you saw an ADOS or an FBA fundraiser? When is the last time you saw an online marketing campaign saying for you to donate to them? Where is their money coming from? Who are the leaders of these people? Why is it every time you click on the profile, it is like something that got created and you look from a profile out of India? because the entire point is that these are online bot farms that are meant to fool and to deceive black folks to not exercise our political power.
Amazon is highlighting. Oh, good.
President Trump is signing executive orders to overturn some kind of law that exists. Those are the laws that are existing to help black people that y'all are saying
That's
don't
the one.
exist.
Black
When
One
you're talking about
United.
these programs and these initiatives that have helped build this black middle class that we have today.
If you have
those
any
were
more
created
suggestions, let
through
us
the
know.
exact same political apparatuses y'all claim or have been ineffective and have done nothing for black people. It is crucially important that we teach civics in our community, that we teach people to understand not just to vote, but why they are voting and the power involved in it. And just as we saw in these elections yesterday, where we saw Democratic socialists winning around the country when everybody has told us that they could never win, what we are seeing now is a political sea change that we haven't seen since the rise of the Tea Party a decade and a half ago, where we're seeing a realignment of American politics. And if black folks are really going to start fighting towards many of these causes, such as reparations, such as territorial concessions, such as an acknowledgement of slavery, the things we have talked about, this is the time to do it. But you can't do that without unity. You can't do that without a plan. You can't do that when you're allowing the federal government and their intelligence agencies to essentially break black people apart and turn us against each other with online misinformation. We're seeing this from every group across the globe.
Derek, we keep trying to explain to people there are consequences to elections. And for the people who chose to sit out, for the people who said, oh no, I don't like her position on Gaza, and fine, you cannot like her position on Gaza. And that is an issue, but also the attack on black people, the attack on black banks, the attack on black companies, the attack on diversity, all of that also is based upon the person sitting in the Oval Office. This fool told us what they were going to do, and they're doing exactly what they said they were going to do.
Roland, this is Project 2025. You're exactly right. They said in Project 2025 that they were going to do this if they get back into office. And so now look. I mean, Nicole said it best. They're coming after our economic strength. Not only are they coming after our political strength, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that later on the show, but they're coming after our economic strength. So when you talk about black and brown communities as it relates to small banks, black banks, and come to housing and small businesses. We've grown in the last 30 years, Roland, and you covered this very, very well on your show. If you look at the number of home ownership in the black and brown community, we continue to soar. We continue to expand on small businesses. Why? Because we are able to go to black-owned banks and get the loans that we need, get the access to the capital that we need, and grow. The OCC is dismantling that right before our eyes. So they're coming after our economic strength, and as Robert just alluded to, they're coming after our political strength. And what's next? They're going to come after our education, as we are continue to talk about. This was all outlined. We've been talking about this the last 2 years in Project 2025.
Listen, Jelana, folks are going to learn that, again, if you sit out elections, if you act like this stuff is not important.
And let people tell you your vote don't count.
It is all coming downstream. Listen, in Texas,
ridiculous.
That MAGA governor, Greg Abbott,
they wouldn't be trying so hard.
Dan Patrick got rid of the HUD program, which was actually put in place by Republican Governor George W. Bush. That is directly going to impact black businesses. This is what MAGA is all about.
And absolutely, and here's what's funny. A lot of the black people you see supporting Republicans are upwardly mobile black people who are successful, who have contracts. And for some reason, even they are finding out that you black too. Because sometimes you make it to a certain level and you think, oh, I'm not black or I'm above race. Well,
now you finding out that you black
say
too.
What you want to say about Kamala, she black. She might have an Indian mother, but her daddy was from Kenya. She went to
Jamaica. Dad was Jamaican.
Jamaica, I'm sorry. Okay, her dad's Jamaican. Okay, I was off. Apologies for that. But at the end of the day, she was more black than Donald Trump. And even when he was president before, he showed himself to be racist.
Absolutely.
And he said very racist things, very derogatory things about black people. So for anyone who wanted to be angry at her about one thing, let me tell you, we are not a monolith. Black people have a lot of problems in a lot of areas. So with HBCUs, access to capital, affordable housing, affordable health care, you go on and on and on, the job market. We needed to as a people, vote for a black woman. Sometimes, I mean, that's how they vote. So why wouldn't we do that? But everybody is hurting now. Everybody,
I love her glasses
including
too.
most of the people who thought Trump was better for them.
Yep.
Because they chose one issue to judge Kamala on, but they always give white folks the benefit of the doubt on everything.
Right.
And for the most part, so many of us are brainwashed, we're colonialized, and we actually think white folks' ice is colder. And that's exactly why we're in the problem we're in right now.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
we are finding out that their heat is hotter.
Well, folks are going to learn. So this is real. The
They're
impact
gonna
is
learn the
real.
hard
All
way.
right, folks, let me tell you about Chapter. Now, if you're in Medicare or about to be,
The hard
system is
way. Where are we on to? Where are we going next? There's an attack on black people with this party. Make no mistake about it. Y'all, I'm going to... Hold on. Somebody saying, die, you idiot.
The fight for civil rights in America.
Oh, this is too long. Hold on. I'm going to have to catch that on her. Yeah, our civil rights are in jeopardy. That's why I be trying to explain to people what you think you know your rights. You don't know shit. You don't know nothing. You don't know nothing. You're going to be for a rude awakening if you don't get your ass up and go vote. You're going to be into a rude awakening. What time is it? My lights ain't up. Let me go over here. Y'all can't get the good stuff. Did I see this one?
You know, I want you to picture something with me for a moment. It's the evening of June 17th, 2026. The Palace of Versailles.
Did I listen to this
yesterday? The same palace where world leaders gathered in 1919 to redraw the map of the modern world.
Yeah, y'all get my
After
lights
the most
up.
devastating war humanity had ever seen.
Sure is,
And there,
all of a sudden,
sitting at a dinner table next to Emmanuel Macron, surrounded by gold leaf and chandeliers and centuries of history.
I think the first
President Trump pulls out a pen
out the mail voting
and signs a memorandum of understanding with the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Address doesn't match. Yep.
He walks out afterward, reporters shouting questions, and he says, and I quote, "It's signed in Versailles, just signed it."
Yeah, and then he up here talking
I've signed my
about they
share
want
of
me to sign it
documents in
real
grand
bad.
settings. I understand the power of a moment. But here's what most people watching that video don't realize. It's not just what he signed, it's what he signed away.
Signed away.
And more importantly, it's the road that brought us to that table in the first place. Because when you understand the full picture, what this deal actually says, what it doesn't say, what it cost us to get here, and where it leaves America going forward, you start to see something very different from the victory lap that's being presented. And I want to walk you through that tonight, honestly and carefully, because this matters. This isn't about one party or the other. This is about whether the United States of America is stronger or weaker tonight than it was before this whole thing started. And we'll come back to that question in a moment, because the answer might not be what you expect. Now, to understand what happened at Versailles, you've got to understand how we got there. And the story doesn't start in February of 2026 when the bombs started falling. It starts in 2018. That's when President Trump, during his first term, pulled the United States out of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal that was negotiated under President Obama. Now, was that deal perfect? No. I'll be the first to tell you, no diplomatic agreement ever is. But here's what it did. It put real constraints on Iran's nuclear program. It had international inspectors on the ground. It had verification mechanisms. And it had the buy-in of our European allies, Russia and China. It was the kind of painstaking multilateral diplomacy that takes years to build. And it was torn up with a signature. Then came 8 years of maximum pressure. Sanctions piled on sanctions. And what happened? Iran didn't collapse. Iran accelerated its enrichment. Iran got closer to a weapon, not further away. Then on February 28th of this year, the United States and Israel launched massive joint strikes against Iranian military and government targets. Iran retaliated with the largest ballistic missile barrage in its history. Over 500 missiles hitting bases and facilities across 7 countries. The Strait of Hormuz was closed. Oil went from $75 a barrel to over $130 in 48 hours. The global economy was thrown into chaos. Let me tell you something I learned in my years in the White House. You can't evaluate a deal without understanding what you burned down to get to the negotiating table. And what we burned down to get to Versailles is something every American needs to reckon with. So let's talk about what's actually in this 14-point memorandum, because the details matter more than the photo opportunity. Point 1 declares the immediate and permanent termination of military operations on all fronts, including in Lebanon, where Israel has been fighting Hezbollah. The United States and Iran commit to negotiating a final deal within 60 days.
Y'all hit the like button because
consent.
you don't have the right vote.
The U.S. begins removing its naval blockade immediately and fully ends it within 30 days.
Cannot tell my mother-in-law
Iran reopens the Strait of Hormuz
I
to commercial
agree.
traffic.
You don't have a right.
With no toll.
She
but
tells
only
them,
for
please
60
stop.
days. After that,
Talking to
Iran
her
and
about
Oman
almost everything.
negotiate the future
Because
administration of the
I totally
strait.
agree. I feel that.
Now, let that sink in.
That's a how dare you.
The Strait of Hormuz.
That is absolutely a how dare you. How can you talk and you didn't vote? How can you complain and you didn't vote? My vote don't count. Yeah, and your words right now don't either. Shut up. You are a part of the problem. So shut up. I totally agree with your mother-in-law. Shut up talking to me. Yeah, you are very much irrelevant. You have no right to complain. And I think people who don't vote, if they are on a government system, I think that they should be put off of it. If you don't get your sorry ass up and vote, then you don't need any form of government assistance. That's my opinion, and I've been firm about that for a while. And I think people who don't vote should be put off expeditiously. Get your ass up off of here. I pay taxes. I don't want you to sit on your ass and not vote. How dare you? How dare you? They already think we sorry and lazy. Yeah. That's my opinion. If you don't vote, you don't get no government assistance. And you see he trying to put their asses off of it. Let's go.
He opens the Strait of Hormuz.
Hit the like button. I'm sick of saying this to y'all. Double tap, the face on your screen, hit those 3 dots at the top right, or leave. Strong women are making our voices heard. Absolutely. I think anybody, that's my opinion. It's an insult. I don't care what color you are. And a lot of them sitting on there having all these kids, getting all the type of assistance, and then you have the nerve to not vote. Shut up.
Moves to commercial traffic with no toll, but only for 60 days. After that, Iran and Oman negotiate the future administration of the Strait. Now, let that sink in. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's crude oil flows, was open and free before this war started. Now its future is subject to negotiation between Iran and its
and ain't nobody touched the like button.
And toll-free passage.
Double tap the face of your phone or hit those 3 dots at the top right corner, or get your funky face ass up out of here. And I ain't moving until you get them up. Did you call him a funky face on TV? Funky face. Yeah, funky face ass up out of here. I said what I said. You don't like it, leave. He doesn't use the word excursion anymore, does he? I am. Oh, now my charger very low. While y'all up here playing, it's gonna click off on y'all asses. Pissed off if you don't like why you enjoy the tea. They want the tea though. They don't want to hit the like button.
Is only guaranteed
I'm gonna
for
shut it
2
down.
months. The MOU also says Iran will maintain the current status quo, commercial traffic with no toll, extendable by mutual consent. The U.S. begins removing its naval blockade immediately and fully ends it within 30 days. Iran reopens the Strait of Hormuz to commercial traffic with no toll, but only for 60 days. After that, Iran and Oman negotiate the future administration of the Strait. Now, let that sink in. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's crude oil flows, was open and free before this war started. Now its future is subject to negotiation between Iran and its neighbors, and toll-free passage is only guaranteed for 2 months. The MOU also says Iran will maintain the current status quo of its nuclear program. It commits Iran not to develop nuclear weapons, a promise they've been making for 50 years. The enriched uranium stockpile, that gets discussed in future technical talks. Meanwhile, the U.S. issues immediate sanctions waivers for Iranian oil exports,
in my scuba suit,
unfreezes roughly $100 billion in Iranian assets with no restrictions on how those funds are used, and agrees to work with regional partners on a $300 billion reconstruction fund for Iran. And here's where things start to get complicated. President Trump told reporters it would be, quote, a little bit unfair for Iran not to have ballistic missiles. That's a sentence I never thought I'd hear an American president say. Now, we've got to remember something. Wars have costs, not just in dollars, but in lives, in trust, in the moral standing of a nation. This war, 108 days of combat, cost the United States over $100 billion in direct military spending. 14 American service members were killed. More than 300 were wounded. Thousands of Iranian civilians lost their lives, including children. And the economic toll on American families? The American Enterprise Institute estimated that between rising fuel prices, diesel costs, and the ripple effects through the supply chain.
I'm an hour and 24 minutes in, 223 people in here, 52 likes. You do the math. Do the math. How does that work? How does that work? How does that work? How does that work? An hour and 25 minutes in, 236 people ear hustling, and it's only 53 likes. Hello, Monique. Can I get you to hit the like button as you enter in? We're wounded. I don't believe the numbers we're getting. Oh, I believe them. I believe they don't want to hit the like button. Yeah. I'm on a vertical live. I believe the numbers. They come through. They don't want to hit the like button. They sorry and lazy, trifling. That's why when I go out and come back in, the numbers drop. Yeah, that's what happens on vertical lives. Yeah, I know how to make them drop. Yeah, I know how to make them drop. All I have to do is leave. Yeah, now we can go.
$100 billion in
see how they pop back?
Spending. 14 American service members were killed. More than 300 were wounded. Thousands of Iranian civilians lost their lives, including children. And the economic toll on American families? The American Enterprise Institute estimated that between $1 billion reconstruction fund for Iran. And here's where things start to get complicated. President Trump told reporters it would be, quote, a little bit unfair
Thank you,
for
Country
Iran
Wall.
not to have ballistic missiles.
Wallace.
That's a sentence I never thought I'd hear an American president say. Now, we've got to remember something. Wars have costs, not just in dollars, but in lives, in trust, in the moral standing of a nation. This war, 108 days of combat, cost the United States over $100 billion in direct military spending. 14 American service members were killed. More than 300 were wounded. Thousands of Iranian civilians lost their lives, including children. And the economic toll on American families? The American Enterprise Institute estimated that between rising fuel prices, diesel costs, and the ripple effects through the supply chain, the average American household was paying roughly $410 more per month.
Thank you, Country Wallace.
Because of this war. Let me tell you something from experience. The most important question a president can ask before ordering military action is not, can we win? The most important question is, What does the day after look like? Because if you don't have a clear answer to that question, if you don't have a diplomatic endgame, if you haven't built a coalition, if you haven't prepared the American people for the true cost, then you are not leading, you are gambling. And gambling with other people's lives and other people's money is not what the presidency is for. The military did its job. The pilots, the sailors, the soldiers, they performed with extraordinary courage and skill. The question is whether the commander-in-chief did his job in giving them a mission that made strategic sense with an outcome that justified what we asked them to sacrifice. Here's the honest truth, and it's a hard one. What this deal does to America's credibility may end up costing us more than the war itself. Think about the sequence. In 2018, we tore up the JCPOA, a deal our allies supported that international inspectors were verifying that was constraining Iran's nuclear program. We said it was a bad deal. We said we could do better. Then we imposed maximum pressure for years. Iran got stronger, not weaker. Then we started a war without a formal declaration from Congress, without full Allied consensus, partly justified by saying Iran was a nuclear threat that Obama's deal failed to contain. And now, 108 days and over $100 billion later, we sign a deal that, and these aren't my words alone, Senator Jack Reed, the top Democrat on armed services, says gives us less than the JCPOA did. Republican Senator Bill Cassidy called it the worst foreign policy blunder in decades. Even Lindsey Graham said the way Iran describes the deal, quote, "It's awful." Now, I want you to think about what that looks like to the rest of the world, to North Korea, to China, to any country that might sit across the table from us in the future. America makes a deal, tears it up, starts a war, spends a fortune, loses lives, and then signs a worse deal than the one it walked away from. When you start governing by memorandum instead of by law, when you bypass Congress and call a framework a victory before the hard work is done, you weaken the very system that makes America's word worth something. Now look, I understand politics. I've been in the arena, and I can see exactly what's happening here. Senator Reid pointed out that Trump turned 80 on June 15th, the same day the deal was first announced. He wanted to give himself a birthday present, and the staging tells you everything. The G7 summit in Avion, the dinner at Versailles, the ceremonial signing in Switzerland, still scheduled for Friday. This is a production designed to look like triumph, but the ground underneath is shaking. Democrats like Chuck Schumer are calling it one of the biggest American disasters. Elizabeth Warren says she can't see how it helps a single American family. Chris Murphy, and he sits on foreign relations, called it, quote, essentially a surrender to Iran on Iran's terms. And he said he'd support it anyway, because the alternative, continuing a war run by what he called incompetent national security leaders, was worse. Think about that for a moment. Democrats are backing a deal they believe is a capitulation, because ending a bad war on bad terms is still better than letting it continue. Meanwhile, Republican senators like Cornyn, Tillis, and Cassidy are expressing deep skepticism. Polling shows Americans disapprove of the war. Trump's economic approval ratings have dropped even among his own base. and the midterms were coming. That tells you everything you need to know about where this war has left us. When both sides are unhappy, and the best argument for the deal is that the alternative is worse. So where does this go from here? The MOU gives 60 days to negotiate a final deal, but every hard question has been pushed into that window. The enriched uranium stockpile that Iran has buried deep underground, Trump himself admitted it would take great work and a lot of time to deal with. The verification and monitoring mechanisms, not yet designed. The future of sanctions, conditional on a final deal that doesn't exist yet. The $300 billion reconstruction fund, details to be determined. Lebanon and Hezbollah. Israel says it won't withdraw. Iran says the ceasefire covers Lebanon, and nobody has reconciled those positions. And Trump told reporters the 60 days is not a hard deadline. Iran can take longer, quote, as long as they're behaving. Now, I see three possible paths forward. The best case, and I hope for it, is that the negotiators use these 60 days to hammer out a real, verifiable agreement with meaningful nuclear controls and genuine IAEA access. That would be a good outcome, and I would support it regardless of who gets the credit. The most likely case, based on everything I've seen in decades of watching these negotiations, is that the talks stall, the deadline gets extended, and a new status quo quietly freezes into place. Iran keeping its enriched uranium, enjoying sanctions relief, and exporting oil, with no final agreement ever signed. And the worst case is that talks collapse entirely, and we're right back where we started, except Iran is now stronger, richer, and more entrenched. And remember, toll-free passage for the Strait of Hormuz is only guaranteed for 60 days. After that, Iran negotiates the future of that waterway. That right there is the part most people don't realize. And so, folks, here's where I want to leave you tonight. Not with anger, not with blame, but with a clear-eyed understanding of where we are and what has to happen next. The lesson of this moment is not that diplomacy failed. Diplomacy didn't fail. Diplomacy was abandoned in 2018 when we tore up a deal that was working. Everything that's happened since, the escalation, the maximum pressure, the war, the chaos, and now this memorandum, has been one long, expensive, painful attempt to get back to a table that America chose to leave. And we got back to that table in a weaker position than when we left it. That's not a partisan statement. That's an observable fact. So what do we do now? We demand congressional oversight of any final agreement. We insist on full public release and genuine debate. We hold our leaders accountable, not with rhetoric, but with votes. And we remember that the strength of American foreign policy has never come from the size of our bombs. It has come from the reliability of our word, the steadiness of our alliances, and the wisdom to know when force is necessary and when it is not. We've been through harder things than this. Vietnam, Iraq, moments where we overreached, where we lost our way, where the cost of our mistakes was measured in lives and treasure and broken trust. And every time we found our way back. But finding your way back requires honesty. It requires admitting where you went wrong. And right now, that is the conversation this country needs to have. Not tomorrow, not after the midterms, right now. Because the American people deserve a foreign policy built on truth, built on strategy, and built on accountability, not photo ops in palaces. And I still believe, with everything in me, that we are capable of exactly that. You know, folks, most people scrolled right past what happened on June the 9th.
Get my lights up.
And I understand that. Life is busy.
And we'll go.
The news moves fast.
Yep.
And a Democratic Senate primary in a small New England state doesn't exactly stop you in your tracks. But let me tell you something. It should have. Because when Graham Plattner, a 41-year-old Marine veteran and oyster farmer from Sullivan,
be
Maine,
respectful and leave
won that Democratic Senate nomination,
apologize to all who have left theirs. Yep, it's only 65 people
shifted underneath our feet.
I'm not going to give all the good tea to people who don't want to hit the like button.
Every single one of you, whether you live in Maine or Montana or anywhere in between. Democrats need to flip 4 seats to take back the Senate majority. 4 seats.
Absolutely, Joe.
And Maine was supposed to be the surest bet on the board. Susan Collins is the only Republican senator representing a state that Kamala Harris carried in 2024. Harris won Maine by 7 points. This should be the easiest pickup Democrats have. But the candidate they just nominated to carry that fight is walking into a general election with more personal baggage than I've seen on a first-time candidate in a very long time. And whether that baggage ends up costing Democrats their shot at the Senate majority, well, we'll come back to that in a moment. Because first, you need to understand the bigger picture of what's really happening in American politics right now, and just how close this whole thing actually is. Now look, let me set the stage for you, because this isn't just about one race in one state. The United States Senate sits at 53 Republicans, 47 Democrats. That's the reality after the 2024 cycle handed the GOP 4 new seats and a comfortable majority. But here's where it gets interesting. Donald Trump's approval ratings have fallen to record lows.
Oh, yeah.
His war in Iran is deeply unpopular with the American people. The economy still feels broken
at 68%, and no, it's not going to show it.
And because of all that, Democrats have been able to recruit some of the strongest Senate candidates I've seen in years. Roy Cooper, a 2-term former governor, is running in North Carolina for the open seat left by Tom Tillis's retirement. Sabato's crystal ball just moved that race to lean Democrat. In Ohio, Sherrod Brown, the only Democrat to win statewide there in nearly 20 years,
we miss you,
is running a special election against John Husted for the seat J.D. Vance gave up to become vice president. That race just moved to toss-up. And in Alaska, Mary Peltola, who beat Sarah Palin for a House seat in 2022, is challenging Dan Sullivan, and the early polling has her competitive. Chuck Schumer is out there saying Democrats have a clear and strong path to the majority. And this is where things start to get complicated. Because all of those paths, every single one of them, assumed that Maine was going to be the foundation, the first domino, the one race Democrats could count on. So let me walk you through what happened in Maine. because the facts matter here. Graham Plattner launched his campaign in August of 2025. Within 10 days, he'd raised $1 million and signed up 3,000 volunteers. He drew 6,500 people to a rally in Portland with Bernie Sanders. He was endorsed by Sanders, by Elizabeth Warren, by Ruben Gallego. He ran as a populist outsider, taking on the billionaire class, fighting for working Mainers who can't afford rent or groceries or health care. And the voters responded. Governor Janet Mills, who had the backing of Schumer and the entire Democratic establishment, couldn't keep up. She dropped out in April. On June the 9th, Plattner won the primary with 72% of the vote. Now that's an extraordinary political story. A first-time candidate, an oyster farmer, defeating the sitting governor and the full weight of the party machine. But here's the honest truth that nobody in politics wants to say out loud right now. Graham Plattner is also carrying controversies that would have ended most campaigns before they started. There were Reddit posts from years back, offensive comments, one mocking a wounded Purple Heart veteran. There was a skull and crossbones tattoo on his chest that resembled a Nazi symbol. He says he didn't know the history when he got it with fellow Marines, and he's had it covered up. And then, just days before the primary, reports surfaced that he'd exchanged sexually explicit text messages with multiple women while married. Now, I am the last person on this earth who is going to throw stones at someone over personal mistakes. I know what it's like to have your worst moments become the only thing people talk about. But I also know this: in a general election against a 5-term incumbent with a $30 million war chest, these are not just personal matters anymore. They become strategic vulnerabilities with national consequences. And we've got to be honest about that. And that brings me to something that's been bothering me about how this whole situation was handled from the top. We've got to remember that leadership in a political party isn't just about picking winners. It's about building a team that can actually govern. And what happened in Maine tells me there were leadership failures at multiple levels. First, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee and Senator Schumer recruited Janet Mills. Now, I have great respect for Governor Mills. She's a serious public servant. But she was 78 years old, running in a cycle that was screaming for energy and generational change. The voters told us plainly they wanted something different, and the establishment wasn't listening. Second, when the controversies around Plattner started surfacing, the Reddit posts, the tattoo, nobody in a position of authority pumped the brakes. Bernie Sanders said we should focus on working families, not Plattner's personal life. I understand that instinct. But there's a difference between defending a candidate and refusing to acknowledge real risks. And third, Plattner himself. On the night he won the primary, he called Susan Collins spineless and corrupt. He said she lied about protecting abortion rights. Now, I understand the frustration behind those words, but let me tell you from experience, the independent voters in Maine, the ones who actually decide general elections, they don't respond well to that kind of language. They want someone who can fight hard and still treat people with basic respect. There's a difference between conviction and recklessness. And right now, I'm not sure the people advising this young man understand which side of that line they're on. Now, let me step back and tell you what this really reveals about where the Democratic Party is right now, because it goes way beyond Maine. What we just watched was the party establishment put forward their preferred candidate, a seasoned governor with decades of experience, and the grassroots blew right through her. That's happened before. It happened with Bernie and Hillary in 2016. It happened in various House primaries. And every time it happens, we have to ask ourselves the same uncomfortable question. Has this party learned anything about the difference between winning a primary and winning a general election? Because those are two fundamentally different things. In a primary, passion wins, energy wins. The loudest voice in the room gets the most applause. But a general election in a swing state requires persuasion.
When you look up
It
word
requires
lie,
reaching people who
the
don't
New
already agree
York
with
Times
you.
will
It
give
requires
you
a candidate
the
who can walk
definition
into a VFW hall
of
in
it when
Bangor
you have
and a Union
time.
Hall in Lewiston and a living room in suburban Portland and
They
make
hit the
every
nail
single
on the head.
person in that room feel heard. Now, there's been some quiet talk about the main ballot replacement provision, that if Plattner were to step aside before July the 13th, the state party could select a new nominee at a convention. Let me tell you something. That is not going to happen. And even if it did, it would alienate every single voter who showed up on June the 9th and chose Plattner with their own hands. You cannot tell 72% of your primary voters that their choice doesn't count and expect them to show up for you in November. And here's why the stakes in Maine ripple far beyond Maine's borders. Let me walk you through the math, because this is the part most people don't fully appreciate. Democrats need 4 seats. Their clearest path right now runs through North Carolina, where Roy Cooper is ahead. It runs through Maine, where they need Plattner to beat Collins. It runs through Ohio, where Sherrod Brown has a puncher's chance in the special election. And then they need a 4th, and that 4th is most likely Alaska, where Mary Peltola is running in a state Trump carried by 13 points. That is an extraordinarily narrow path. Now, if Maine is a toss-up instead of a likely Democratic pickup, the entire calculation changes. Suddenly, the DSC has to pour money into a race they thought was secure. That's money that doesn't go to Ohio. That's money that doesn't go to Alaska. One weakened candidate in one state forces Democrats to stretch resources across the entire map. And when you're trying to thread a needle through 4 states simultaneously, you cannot afford a single one of them to wobble. I've seen this before, folks. I've watched election cycles where one miscalculation in one primary created a chain reaction that cost the party winnable seats in states 1,000 miles away. Georgia, with John Ossoff defending, is still competitive. Michigan has a messy Democratic primary that won't resolve until August. Every piece of this puzzle has to fall exactly right for Democrats to get to 50. So where does this leave us? Let me give you 3 roads that could unfold from here. And I want to be straight with you about all of them. The first road is that Graham Plattner cleans up his act, runs a disciplined general election campaign focused on kitchen table issues, housing costs, health care, groceries, the things Maine families actually lose sleep over, and makes this race a referendum on Susan Collins' record, not his own past. If he does that, he can win. Collins' approval in Maine has dropped below 43%. Mainers are frustrated. The environment favors Democrats. But discipline is the key word. And nothing I've seen so far tells me discipline is this campaign's strong suit. The second road is that the controversies keep coming. Republicans have barely started their opposition research. The National Republican Senatorial Committee has already promised to expose and destroy his candidacy. If more stories surface, if the sexting allegations expand, if the Reddit posts get turned into television ads that run every 15 minutes from Labor Day to November, Collins wins, and Democrats almost certainly fall short of the majority. The third road, the one some nervous insiders whisper about, is that Plattner steps aside voluntarily before the July deadline. I'll be honest, I don't think that happens. His voters would feel betrayed, and the replacement process would be chaotic at best. But I want you to understand that the fact serious people are even discussing it tells you everything you need to know about how fragile this moment is. But here's what I want to leave you with, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. What happened in Maine on June the 9th was democracy in action.
For the culture,
voters spoke.
LL3,
They
did you hit
chose
the
a
like
candidate
button?
who excited them,
Please.
who made them feel heard, who promised to fight the billionaire class and stand up for working people. That is democracy working exactly the way it's supposed to. And I will never criticize the American people for making their choice. But democracy also asks us to be honest with ourselves about what comes next. Excitement wins primaries. Discipline wins general elections. And the distance between those two things is where campaigns go to live or die. I learned that lesson the hard way across 2 presidential campaigns and 8 years in the White House. You have to earn every single vote, not just the ones that already love you, but the ones that aren't sure about you yet, the ones that are watching and waiting and deciding whether you're serious enough to trust with their future. Democrats have a real path to taking back the Senate in 2026. It is narrow, it is fragile, and it demands that every single candidate on this map, in Maine, in North Carolina, in Ohio, in Alaska, in Georgia, runs like their race is the one that decides everything, because it might be. The American people deserve a Senate that works for them. They deserve leaders who show up not just with passion, but with the preparation and the character to govern once they get there. That's what I believe. That's what I've always believed. And I still believe this country has the capacity to get it right, but only if we're willing to do the hard, honest work that democracy demands of all of us.
Okay, I got one more on my show, and I'm gonna go to sleep because, yeah, it don't make no sense that y'all to Obama destroyed China. It don't make no sense that my likes ain't where they need to be. So let me.
I want to talk about So today I want to talk about something that I think almost everyone is misreading right now, and I mean badly misreading, because over the last week, the United States and Iran signed an agreement to end this war. They are calling it the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding, brokered, and I want you to notice this detail, brokered by Pakistan. And the moment it was signed, the narrative split into two completely different stories. In Tehran, the Iranians are calling this agreement a declaration of America's defeat. And in the West, the headlines are saying America brought peace, America ended the war, America brought Iran to the table. But here is the story that almost nobody is telling you, and it is the most important one. Because the most revealing thing about this deal is not what is in it. The most revealing thing about this deal is who got left out of it. And the answer is Israel. America made peace with Iran, and to do it, America walked away from Israel. And I want you to sit with that for a moment, because if you have been watching this channel, you know that for the entire length of this war, the story we were told was that Israel was driving the bus, that America was fighting Iran on Israel's behalf, that the tail was wagging the dog. So how do we get from there to here? To a deal that Israeli officials are openly alarmed about, a deal that waives sanctions on Iran while Israel watches from the sidelines? That is the question I want to answer today. Because once you understand why America abandoned Israel to make this deal, you understand something much deeper about how alliances actually work, and you understand who really had the power in this relationship all along. So let me break this down carefully the way I always do, using game theory and structural analysis. And let's start from the beginning with what is actually in this agreement, because the details matter enormously. Here is what the deal does. It halts the fighting. It opens a 60-day window for negotiations toward a permanent settlement. The United States agreed to waive sanctions on Iran for 60 days, which allows Tehran to sell its oil and actually get paid for it. The Strait of Hormuz reopens to commercial traffic, and in exchange, Iran agrees to come to the table and talk about its nuclear program. That is the headline version. Now here is what the deal does not do, and this is the part you need to pay attention to. The agreement does not address Iran's ballistic missile program. The agreement does not address Iran's support for its regional allies, its proxies, the network that Israel considers the single greatest threat to its existence. And the agreement, at least so far, has produced no clear, verifiable Iranian concession on the nuclear question. In fact, as we speak, the Americans are saying Iran agreed to let inspectors back in, and the Iranians are saying no such thing was agreed. So let's look at this from Israel's point of view. For the entire war, Israel had three core demands: end Iran's nuclear program, end Iran's missile program, and end Iran's support for the proxy network surrounding Israel. And the deal that America just signed addresses, at best, one of those three, and even that one is in dispute. So of course Israeli officials are alarmed. America fought a war supposedly on Israel's behalf and then signed a peace deal that gives Israel almost nothing it actually wanted. Now the Western media is treating this as a surprise, as if America suddenly changed its mind, as if Trump woke up one day and decided to abandon an ally. But it is not a surprise. It is not random. It is the logical, predictable outcome of the incentive structure, and game theory could have told you this was coming. So let me walk you through it step by step, because each step builds on the last. Let's start with the first step, which is understanding the difference between what an alliance says it is and what an alliance actually is. In public, the alliance between America and Israel is described in the language of values, shared democracy, shared history, an unbreakable bond. That is the language. But in game theory, we do not look at the language. We look at the incentives. And the truth about every alliance in history, every single one, is that it lasts exactly as long as it serves the interests of the stronger party. Alliances are not marriages. They are not friendships. They are contracts of convenience between states that have no permanent friends, only permanent interests. And the moment an alliance stops serving the interest of the stronger party, that alliance is abandoned. This is not cynicism. This is the iron law of international relations, and it has been true since Athens abandoned its allies, since Rome abandoned its client kings, since Britain abandoned everyone it ever promised to protect the moment the cost outran the benefit. So the real question is not, why did America abandon Israel? The real question is, at what point did continuing this war for Israel stop serving America's interest? And to answer that, we have to go to step 2, which is understanding what this war was actually costing America. Now, I have talked before on this channel about the economics of this war, and I want to bring it back because this is the engine of everything. When Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, it did something very clever. It did not attack America directly. It attacked the global economy, which means it attacked America indirectly through the one thing American presidents cannot ignore, the price of oil and the health of the financial markets. Every week the strait stayed closed, oil prices stayed elevated. Every week oil stayed elevated, the American economy absorbed more pain. Inflation, fuel costs, shipping costs, the stock market, all of it under pressure. And here's the thing about American politics that Iran understood perfectly. The American public has a very low tolerance for foreign wars that hurt their wallet. They will support a war that is quick, cheap, and victorious. They will not support a war that is long, expensive, and inconclusive. And this war had become long, expensive, and inconclusive. So the pressure on the American president was building from every direction at once. And then something happened that I want you to pay very close attention to, because it is one of the clearest signals in this entire story. The United States Senate, for the first time, passed a war powers resolution rebuking the president over this conflict. Now, think about what that means. That is the American legislature, the body that represents the American people, formally telling the president, we do not authorize this, we want out. That is the political system itself beginning to crack under the weight of the war. And when a president sees his own Senate turning against him, when he sees the economy bleeding, when he sees the polls dropping, the calculation changes. The cost of continuing the war for Israel's benefit has now exceeded the benefit. And the moment that happens, game theory tells you exactly what a rational actor does. He cuts a deal, he takes the exit, he ends the war on the best terms he can get, and he does not let his allies' unfinished objectives keep him trapped in a war his own people no longer support. So that is step 2. The war became too expensive for America to keep fighting on Israel's behalf. Now let's go to step 3, which is the deeper and more uncomfortable truth, the question of who was really using whom. Because for the entire war, the dominant narrative was that Israel was manipulating America, that through lobbying, through political influence, through deep financial ties, Israel had captured American foreign policy and was steering the most powerful country on earth into a war that served Israeli interests. And there is truth in that. I have discussed those mechanics before. But here is what this deal reveals. And it is something that should make every small power in the world nervous. When the costs got high enough, all of that influence, all of that lobbying, all of those deep ties, none of it was enough. Because at the end of the day, Israel is the smaller power, and America is the larger power. And when the interests of the larger power and the smaller power diverged, when America wanted out and Israel wanted to keep going, the larger power did what larger powers always do. It served itself first. So the lesson here, and I want to be very precise about this, is that a smaller power can influence a larger power right up until the moment the larger power's core interests are threatened. As long as the war was cheap for America, Israel.
Oh, it's 573 people in here. I need for 500 people to hit the like button. Hit those 3 dots at the top right corner of your screen. How do I have 558 people here and y'all not hitting the like button? If you're on your phone, just double tap the face of your phone. Come on, the quicker y'all hit the like button, the quicker I can move forward. As y'all can hear my voice, I can go to sleep. Y'all continue to hit the like button.
This deal revealed.
I'm going to shut it down
and it is
this time, I
something that
promise.
should make every small power in the world
I'm going to
nervous.
end it right when it starts
When the
getting
cost
good.
got high enough, all of that influence, all of that lobbying, all of those deep ties, none of it was enough. Because at the end of the day, Israel is the smaller power and America is the larger power. And when the interests of the larger power and the smaller power diverged, when America wanted out and Israel wanted to keep going, the larger power did what larger powers always do. It served itself first. So the lesson here, and I want to be very precise about this, is that a smaller power can influence a larger power right up until the moment the larger power's core interests are threatened. As long as the war was cheap for America, Israel could keep America in it. But the moment the war became a genuine threat to the American economy and the American president's political survival, the influence evaporated. The dog stopped letting the tail wag it. This is the structural reality of being a junior partner in an alliance with a superpower. You are useful, you are valued, you are protected right up until you become inconvenient. And then you discover that the bond was never unbreakable. It was always conditional. It was always a contract. So that is step 3. Now let's go to step 4, which is to ask, why did America choose this particular exit, this particular deal? Because there were other ways out, and the way a power chooses to leave a war tells you everything about what it actually fears. And here is what I think America feared most. America feared escalation it could not control. Remember the structural problem of this war that I have laid out before. America could dominate from the air, but it could not win on the ground without a catastrophic invasion. America was burning through expensive interceptors trying to stop cheap drones. And every week the war continued, the risk grew that something would spiral, that a strike would hit the wrong target, that the Gulf states would be pulled deeper in, that the whole region would ignite in a way that no one could put back in the box. So America did the rational thing. It took the off-ramp while the off-ramp still existed. And notice who built that off-ramp. Pakistan, not the United Nations, which is paralyzed, not the great Western institutions. Pakistan mediated this with the Gulf states and others in the room. And that detail, that the world's most powerful country needed a middle power to broker its exit from a war, that is itself a signal of the multipolar world I keep telling you we are moving into. The era when America could end its own wars on its own terms is passing. Now it needs mediators. Now it needs the help of regional powers. That is not the behavior of an unchallenged hegemon. That is the behavior of a great power that has learned the limits of its own strength. So that is step 4. America chose the exit that minimized the risk of uncontrollable escalation, and it needed help to do it. Now, I can already hear the counter-argument, and it is a serious one. So let me address it directly. Someone is going to say, but this is not abandonment. America did not betray Israel. The two are still allies. America will still arm Israel, still defend Israel, still stand with Israel. This is just a pause, a tactical ceasefire, and the alliance is as strong as ever. And to that I say, you are partly right. America and Israel will remain allies. Nobody is tearing up the relationship. But here is what matters, and I want you to really hear this. An alliance is not measured by what partners say in good times. An alliance is measured by what the stronger partner does when its interests and the weaker partner's interests collide. And in this war, when those interests collided,
Hey,
when
Brian.
Israel wanted the war to continue until Iran's missiles and proxies were destroyed, and America wanted out because the war was crushing its economy, America chose itself. It signed a deal that leaves Israel's core threats intact. That is the revealed preference. That is what actually happened when the chips were down. And revealed preferences, what a player actually does under pressure, always tell you more than declared preferences what a player says in public. So the alliance survives, yes. But Israel just learned in the most expensive way possible that the alliance has a ceiling, that America will fight for Israel only up to the point where it starts to genuinely cost America. And beyond that point, Israel is on its own. Now I want to zoom out because I want to put this in the context of something much bigger than this single deal. Because what we are watching here is a pattern that has repeated throughout the entire history of empires and their client states. The powerful protector and the smaller dependent. And the smaller dependent always makes the same mistake. It assumes the protection is unconditional. It assumes that because the protector has stood by it so far, the protector will stand by it forever. And then the day comes when the protector's own interests change and the smaller power discovers too late that it had built its entire security on a promise that was only ever conditional. Think about the allies of Athens during the Peloponnesian War, the smaller city-states that tied their fate to Athenian power and were abandoned or sacrificed the moment Athens calculated that they were no longer worth the cost. Think about the client kingdoms of Rome, propped up and protected for as long as they were useful, and discarded when the strategic math changed. Think about how many times in the 20th century a great power encouraged a smaller ally to take a hard line, promised to stand behind it, and then, when the larger geopolitical picture shifted, left that ally exposed. This is one of the oldest patterns in all of statecraft. The strong use the weak as instruments, and instruments are kept only as long as they are useful. And what makes it tragic every single time is that the smaller power usually cannot see it coming because it has confused being valued with being protected unconditionally. Israel right now is learning the difference between those two things. So let me bring this all together and give you the clear, simple framework you can carry with you. America did not abandon Israel because America is fickle or because of any single decision by any single leader. America abandoned Israel's war aims because the structure demanded it. The war became too expensive economically. The political will at home collapsed, signaled most clearly by the Senate's rebuke. The risk of uncontrollable escalation grew too high, and when all of that pressure converged, the larger power did what larger powers have always done. It served its own interest first, took the exit, and left the smaller power's unfinished objectives unfinished. And the deal it signed, the Islamabad Memorandum, reflects exactly that. It ends the war America could no longer afford, it reopens the oil America needed flowing, and it quietly leaves Israel's deepest fears, the missiles, the proxies, the nuclear ambiguity, unresolved. So when you hear Iran calling this a declaration of America's defeat, understand what they are really saying. They are not just saying they survived the war. They are saying they broke the alliance's resolve. They forced the larger power to choose between its smaller ally and its own economy, and they correctly bet that America would choose itself. That is the real story of this deal. Not peace, not victory, but the moment the most powerful alliance in the modern world discovered its own limits, in public for everyone to see. And every other small power that depends on American protection is watching this very carefully right now and asking itself a very uncomfortable question. If America did this to Israel, its closest partner in the region, what would it do to me? Okay, so that is my analysis for today. And I want to be very clear about what this is and what it is not. This is not prophecy. I am not telling you the alliance is finished or that I know exactly what comes next. The negotiations could collapse. The war could reignite. New pressures could pull America back in. I could be wrong, and if I am, we will come back and analyze why. But I want you to think about this carefully, question it, push back on it, test it against what you see happening in the world. Because the goal here is never to tell you what to think. The goal is to give you a framework so that you can think for yourself.
Hold on.
You know, folks, I want you to picture something.
Something happened that almost nobody in Western media is explaining properly. For 18 months, the United States funded, armed, and diplomatically shielded one of the most devastating military campaigns the world has seen in decades.
I want to hear this.
Let me ask you something uncomfortable. What if the man the Western world has spent 4 years trying to silence, sanction, isolate, and humiliate just walked onto the world stage and the world showed up to listen? Not a handful of allies, not a few sympathetic fringe nations.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me ask you something uncomfortable. What if the man the Western world has spent 4 years trying to silence, sanction, isolate, and humiliate just walked onto the world stage and the world showed up to listen? Not a handful of allies, not a few sympathetic fringe nations. Representatives from over 130 countries filled that hall in St. Petersburg. Business leaders, energy ministers, vice presidents, and for the first time in years, Americans. That is a scene I want you to hold in your mind as we unpack what Vladimir Putin said at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, SPF 2026, and why his remarks are reverberating far beyond what most Western headlines are willing to admit. I'm Professor Zhang Shuqin, and today we're going to do something that has become increasingly rare in public discourse. We're going to read the situation carefully, honestly, and without a predetermined conclusion. Because here is the truth. Whether you admire Putin, despise him, or sit somewhere in the complicated middle, what he said in St. Petersburg on June 5th, 2026 carries real strategic weight. It tells us something important about the direction of the world. And if you want to understand geopolitics in the second half of this decade, you cannot afford to look away. So let us begin at the beginning. Why was SPF 2026 different? Every year, Russia hosts this economic forum. And every year since 2022, Western governments have tried to drain it of credibility. Sanctions, boycotts, warnings to business leaders about reputational risk. The message was always the same. Stay away from Moscow stage or face consequences. And yet, this year, the forum drew its largest and most diverse attendance in recent memory. Over 20,000 delegates. The president of Uzbekistan on stage alongside Putin. The vice president of China in attendance. The energy minister of Saudi Arabia, one of the world's most consequential oil producers, not merely present, but invited personally to join Putin at the podium. And then there were the Europeans who showed up uninvited by Brussels. A Romanian member of the European Parliament spoke from the floor and told the audience, plainly, that the Romanian people do not hate Russia and do not wish to keep funding a proxy war. A former Austrian foreign minister, now residing in Russia, raised questions about the ethics of drone warfare and the direction of European policy. None of this made the front pages in London or Washington or Berlin. But here's what I want you to understand. The attendance itself was a message. When Putin walked out to that hall and looked at a sea of representatives from 130 countries. The moderator, Geeta Mohan of India Today, opened with what seemed like a rhetorical question. She asked, "Does this look like isolation?" Putin's response was direct. He said there was no isolation to begin with, that the attempt to isolate Russia was initiated by one administration in Washington, followed by what he called the satellites in Europe. And then he made a point that is genuinely difficult to dispute. Russian uranium still supplies the American market. Energy projects in the Russian Far East continue with partners who formally announced their departure years ago. Business, he said, is more pragmatic than politics. That is a provocation, yes, but it is a provocation rooted in documented fact. Now let us get to the heart of what Putin said and why it matters so much beyond Russia's borders. The central argument of his SPF 2026 address can be summarized in one sentence. The world is in the middle of the biggest structural transformation in decades, and the West is on the losing end of it. He framed this not as Russian wishful thinking, but as a statistical reality backed by the IMF and the World Bank, institutions that are not exactly known for their sympathy toward Moscow. The numbers are striking. BRICS nations, the bloc that now includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and a growing list of newly admitted members, account for approximately 40% of global GDP measured by purchasing power parity. The G7, under 29%. Let that sink in. The club of wealthy Western democracies that has dominated global economic governance since the post-war era now represents less than $3 in $10 of global economic output. Meanwhile, the bloc that the West spent a generation dismissing as a collection of unstable emerging markets now generates nearly half of all global economic growth. Putin cited 5-year IMF data showing that BRICS countries accounted for 49% of global economic growth between 2021 and 2025. The G7's contribution over the same period, 18%. He also noted projected growth rates going forward. BRICS nations averaging above 4% annually through the end of the decade, versus roughly 1.5% for G7 economies. China growing at 5%, India at nearly 8%, Indonesia above 5%. Meanwhile, the EU barely managing 0.9%, the UK at 1.4%, the United States at 2%. Now, I want to be precise here. These are not Putin's invented numbers. He acknowledged that himself, saying, and I am paraphrasing, that even Western-led institutions are now forced to record these realities. That is a telling phrase. It signals that Moscow believes it no longer needs to argue its case on economic power. The data is making the argument for them, but economics is only part of the story. Putin's deeper argument at SPF was philosophical, and in some ways more dangerous because it is the kind of argument that resonates far outside traditional Russian allies. He described what he called the shift from a vertical hierarchical model, a world structured around the priorities and preferences of a small number of powerful states, to a multipolar system where power is distributed across new centers of gravity, Asia, the Middle East, Africa, Latin America. This is not a new argument for Russia. Moscow has been making this case for over a decade. But what has changed is the context in which it lands. In 2014, when Putin first openly challenged Western hegemony, the global economy looked very different. The dollar was uncontested. Western financial infrastructure was the only game in town. American military reach was overwhelming. By 2026, the landscape has shifted in ways that are subtle but profound. Bilateral trade between BRICS nations already exceeds $1 trillion annually. The ruble now accounts for 65% of Russia's export transactions, up from almost nothing before sanctions. National currencies are increasingly used in trade between Asian nations, Arab states, and African partners. New logistics corridors are being built, from the trans-Arctic route to overland rail connections across Eurasia. Putin called it, memorably, a race for sovereignty. He argued that countries around the world are no longer content to operate within a financial and logistical architecture designed by and for Western powers. They are building their own infrastructure, their own settlement systems, their own supply chains, not because they are ideologically anti-Western, but because they have watched what happened to Russia, how its foreign reserves were frozen, how its banks were expelled from SWIFT, how sanctions were weaponized, and they have drawn a rational conclusion. If it could happen to Russia, it could happen to anyone. This is the argument that is echoing in capitals from Riyadh to New Delhi to Jakarta. And it is why the Saudi energy minister stood on that stage with Putin and pledged that the two countries would stay together, his words, until death parts us. That is an extraordinary statement from a senior official of a country that is nominally an American security partner. I want to turn now to Ukraine, because no honest analysis of Putin's remarks at SPIEF can avoid the war. Let me be clear about where I stand as an analyst. Russia's invasion of Ukraine was a violation of international law and a human catastrophe. That is a statement of fact, not a political position. The suffering of the Ukrainian people is real, and it should never be minimized or forgotten in any geopolitical discussion. But understanding Putin's position clearly, precisely, without distortion, is not the same as endorsing it. And if you want to actually end this war, rather than merely feel righteous about it, you have to understand what the other side is saying. At SPIEF, Putin addressed Ukraine on multiple fronts. He responded to an open letter that Ukrainian President Zelensky had sent, a public letter delivered the previous day addressed directly to Putin, calling for negotiations. Putin's response was characteristically sharp. On the question of Zelensky's age taunt directed at Putin, Putin replied that the measure of a leader is not age, but capacity and efficiency. On Zelensky's legitimacy, Putin pointed out that Ukraine's presidential elections, originally scheduled under constitutional law, have not been held since 2022. He suggested that Zelensky's mandate deserves scrutiny and that legal experts, not politicians, should assess the question. He stated Russia's position on peace talks with precision. Moscow is willing to pursue some of its objectives through negotiation rather than military means. But he rejected what he described as a temporary ceasefire used simply to allow Ukraine to rearm and extend the conflict. Russia, he said, would only accept a genuine, lasting settlement based on core agreements previously reached between the two sides. Whether you find that position reasonable or outrageous depends significantly on your prior beliefs. But here is a strategic reality that analysts across the ideological spectrum are acknowledging. The war has entered a phase where neither side has the capacity to achieve a decisive military victory. And the path forward almost certainly runs through negotiation. Putin's willingness to articulate specific conditions, even if those conditions are contested, is a different posture than the one Russia held in 2022. That shift is significant. He also addressed Ukrainian troop losses, stating figures that, while impossible to independently verify, align with estimates from sources outside Moscow. He claimed Ukrainian forces have suffered losses of around 40,000 personnel per month, and that total troop numbers have fallen by 100,000. Western analysts have disputed the precision of these numbers while acknowledging that Ukrainian casualty rates are severe. Let me move to something that received relatively little Western coverage, but is, in my view, one of the most strategically interesting parts of Putin's SPIEF remarks, his statements on Iran and nuclear energy. Shortly before SPIEF, the United States conducted military strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities. This was an escalation of extraordinary proportions, a unilateral military action by a nuclear power against the civilian infrastructure of another sovereign state, one that carries its own nuclear ambitions. The global reaction was divided sharply along predictable lines. Putin's position was measured but unambiguous. He said he saw no provocative actions from Iran that would justify the American strike. He expressed hope that the subsequent truce between Washington and Tehran would evolve into lasting peace. He described the decision to halt hostilities as, in his framing, the only correct one. He also explicitly denied that Russia provided direct military support to Iran during the confrontation, clarifying that Russia's support was limited to political and diplomatic channels. And then he made a statement with long-term strategic implications. Russia supports Iran's right to develop peaceful nuclear programs, and the two countries are continuing to cooperate on nuclear energy infrastructure, including new reactors at the Bashar power plant. Read this carefully. Russia is positioning itself as a guarantor of Iran's civilian nuclear future. That is not just a bilateral energy deal. It is a statement of strategic depth, a message that Iran has a patron in Moscow that will not be deterred by Washington's military pressure. In the context of a potential Iranian nuclear agreement, Russia's role in any framework is now impossible to ignore. This is the kind of geopolitical consequence that gets lost in the noise of day-to-day news cycles, but which will shape the architecture of the Middle East for years to come. I also want to draw your attention to what Putin did not say at SPF, because the silences are as revealing as the words. Earlier this year, in his first major foreign policy address of 2026, Putin spoke broadly about global instability, called for a new European security framework, and described the world as entering a period of deepening conflict. And yet, in that same speech, he said nothing about Venezuela, where Nicolas Maduro was removed from power, a development with enormous consequences for Russian interests in Latin America. He said nothing about protests in Iran, which was already showing signs of internal pressure. He said nothing about Greenland, despite months of American rhetoric about annexing the territory. These omissions puzzled Western analysts, but I think the explanation is strategic, not confused. Putin is operating in a mode of disciplined message management. He is focusing his public remarks on the arguments he believes he is winning: the economic shift away from the West, the failure of isolation, the credibility of BRICS, and avoiding the topics where Russian positioning is complicated or defensive. That is not weakness. That is the behavior of a leader who has learned through years of painful experience that the global information environment punishes overextension. Now, what does all of this mean for the world, and especially for those of us watching from Asia? I want to offer 3 observations. First, the framing of isolation has failed, is being received very differently in the global South than in Western capitals. In Washington and Brussels, the narrative remains that Russia is diplomatically isolated and economically crippled. But in New Delhi, in Riyadh, in Jakarta, in Cairo, in Addis Ababa, the perception is almost the opposite. They see a Russia that has weathered 4 years of extraordinary pressure, maintained economic function, expanded its diplomatic footprint, and gained ground militarily. They draw their own conclusions about the durability of Western-led sanctions regimes. Second, the BRICS economic data that Putin cited is not fabricated. The structural shift in global economic weight away from the G7 toward emerging economies is a documented multi-decade trend that long predates the Ukraine war. Putin did not create this shift. He is surfing it. And his ability to position Russia at the rhetorical center of this shift as a champion of sovereignty and multipolarity gives Moscow a kind of soft power in the global South that its military hardware never could. Third, and most importantly, for those of us who care about peace, the gap between the stated conditions for negotiation and the current reality on the ground is large, but not infinite. Putin's willingness to articulate specific positions, even problematic ones, is a precondition for diplomacy. The question is whether any broker with credibility in both Moscow and Kyiv, and in both Washington and Beijing, can step into that space. History tells us that wars of this type do not end with one side's total victory. They end with exhaustion, negotiation, and a settlement that satisfies no one completely, but allows both sides to stop bleeding. The sooner that conversation happens seriously, the better for the people of Ukraine, for the people of Russia, and for a world that desperately needs its attention and resources directed elsewhere. Let me close with this. One of the things I find most revealing about the reaction to Putin's SPF remarks is the way they have been covered or not covered in Western media. The numbers he cited, the attendance he commanded, the geopolitical arguments he made. These are not secrets. They are publicly available, verifiable, and consequential. And yet much of the Western press has chosen either to ignore them, to frame them reflexively as propaganda, or to bury them beneath wall-to-wall coverage of Zelensky's open letter. That tells us something important, not about Putin, but about us, about the degree to which our information ecosystems have become self-reinforcing, comfortable, and strategically blind. I'm not asking you to admire Vladimir Putin. I am not suggesting that his vision of a multipolar world is benign or that his conduct of the Ukraine war is anything other than catastrophic. But I am asking you to take seriously the possibility that a leader you have been encouraged to dismiss is making arguments that are landing with evidence in the majority of the world's population. Because geopolitics does not care about our preferences. It does not pause to accommodate our moral frameworks. The world is shifting, whether the West acknowledges it or not. And the question for all of us, analysts, citizens, policymakers, is whether we are going to engage with that shift honestly, or whether we are going to keep being surprised. SPF 2026 was a reminder that Russia is not finished. The remarks Putin made there on multipolarity, on BRICS, on Ukraine, on Iran, on sovereignty are drawing global attention for a reason. Understanding that reason is not optional. It is the minimum requirement for navigating what comes next. Thank you for watching, and as always, think clearly, read widely, and never confuse the map for the territory.
Okay, y'all, good night. I'm going to sleep. See y'all later on. Bye. Can y'all hear me? Can't pass them. Let me hear this with pen. Because they said Ken Paxton don't want the real video of Carmelo Anthony played.
Mr. Paxton, what do you think about Adam Hoffman? Why'd you get a plea deal for a child sex?
What? Happened. Okay, don't want to play. EZRA. Good night. Okay, so it stopped moving. Y'all, good night.